Hey, I'm live. What's going on? Welcome, everybody. It's hanging with Mr. Douglas time this Sunday evening. A nice, casual chill sesh, I think. That's what we're going for today. It's going to be nice and relaxed. It'll be live. And I just wanted to address a story that I've referenced several times with Robert Monroe. Robert Monroe has been uh, talked about quite a bit recently. Jordan Crowder has been doing an excellent job of discussing Robert Monroe's works, and through several different instances recently throughout life, I recall a particular story that I will quote from his book, Ultimate Journeys. And it's about cats. I recently lost my cat, whom was my wonderful companion. I found her along with my good friend when I was living in North Hollywood. The first time I saw her, her name was Socks. The first time I saw Socks, she, it was late at night. I was coming back from rehearsal from a show that I was doing. And we were renting out this really nice house in North Hollywood. It was late at night. You could see the stars in the sky. I was outside smoking a joint, dangling my feet in the pool. We had a pool in the backyard. And there was this wall dividing what's going on, Rev self-destruct, salutations. I'm talking about my cat, about to get into Robert Monroe's cat reference story, which I find to be a salve when we lose our cat companions in this physical realm. But telling the story about how I found my cat, how I met my cat named Socks. She appeared on this dividing wall across from the pool. So I was sitting in the pool, feet dangling, smoking a joint. And she hopped up on the top of this concrete wall, about 6 feet, appeared this spindly little black and white tuxedo cat with golden eyes staring like death at me. Just, who are you doing and what are you doing in my territory? And I was like, oh, hello, pretty cat. And you do the two blinks, the slow two blinks to say hello, the boop, the boop. And she didn't move, but she two blinked back. Oh, thank you, thank you. She is incredible, and I'm grateful that now she is no longer hindered by the shackles of the physical, can experience life without the kind of pain that she was going through, and can be around, at her leisure when she can be of assistance and go on her own adventures without having to be stuck inside. But anyway, so she popped up, she gave me the two blinks back, then she hopped down on the wall, kept watching me, and I just kept smoking my joint watching her. She lifted up her leg and took a piss on the wall and stared at me the entire time. And then disappeared, but kept coming back day after day. And eventually, my friend and roommate at the time started leaving dry food out, and she started eating it, started hanging out more. At one point, we were just hanging out with her in the afternoon. She leapt up into the middle of the air. This bird came swooping down. She went, bam! She caught that bird and brought it down to the ground, wrestled with it, but didn't kill it, didn't do it. It's just kind of like, I've got you. I own you, bird, and let the bird go. The bird took a moment, was like, what the fuck, am I alive? Oh my God. Flew off. My cat was a gentle tyrant. Socks was. But she ended up coming with us from North Hollywood to Glendale, California. We thought we had lost her and searched the neighborhood for like 3 hours. She was hiding in between a crevice of the washing machine and the kitchen area. And she scampered out and was like, hey, where did you guys go? I was like, we were looking for you. Anyway, she bonded with me, and I took her from North Hollywood to Colorado, and then all the way back to Virginia, and then down here to where I am now in Richmond, Virginia. And we had a wonderful 15 years together, truly my spirit animal. I miss her dearly. But I recall this beautiful anecdote by Robert Monroe. And quick summary, Robert Monroe, Monroe Institute in Virginia. Dude was into radio recording and discovered binaural beats, designed hemisync, which the CIA uses to induce altered states. He created the gateway experience. It's a beautiful thing. I do utilize it every so often. Currently, you can find Focus 10 on YouTube. And if you're looking for a nice way to go to sleep, it's a great way to relax and begin to open yourself up to more of your interior world, and perhaps awaken some latent intuition facilities that you may have. Anyway, Robert Monroe has written these 3 books: Journeys Out of the Body, Far Journeys, and Ultimate Journeys. Excuse me, it's Ultimate Journeys that I will be reading from. But he goes through all these experiences leaving his body after going through his own versions of what ends up becoming the gateway process. He's going off and having these out of body experiences, meeting these non human intelligences. And he is the gentleman who introduces the word loosh into the vernacular in the modern world. He gets a breakdown, at least according to this non-human intelligence that he was interacting with, that we are a part of a farm that produces loosh through emotional excretion that is used as food and fuel by a gardener. It's a very interesting way of saying that, we're cattle and that we're used as sustenance for higher non-physical beings. I don't think that's the whole story, but that was the story that was presented to him. Anyway, as he's going through his experiences in the second book, Far Journeys, he's leaving his body and he's still kind of getting his training wheels off in experiencing his out-of-body experiences. And at this one point, he's leaving his body, kind of leaves his body, his physical body's behind him, and all of a sudden these globules jump on him and he's freaking out. He doesn't know what the hell these things are. And they're holding on to him and kind of running around him, and he's trying to get him off. And in his out-of-body state, he's going, help, help, help. Somebody help me. He can't get these things off. It's stressing. It's freaking him out because he doesn't know what they are. And he can't really discern what these little living globules of energy are in his out-of-body state. And this kind of wonderful being, yes, emotional excretion. I'm sure I'm not the first person to say emotional excretion, but it was the first thing that came to mind. I don't know if he says it. He probably does. But anyway, thank you. I appreciate that. We're rung for emotional excretion. So he's leaving, he's out of his body, he's got these globules on him, and he doesn't know what to do. And this kind of authoritative, beneficent being comes down and pulls these globules off of him and rises up beyond the ceiling, out of view, disappears, and he is calmed and I believe goes right back into his body. And it is not until Ultimate Journeys, his 3rd book, that he realizes what that experience was. And that's where we will jump into this section of the book. It's page 66 for anybody who wants to follow along. So he goes into it and he says, this event that he was just experiencing out of body was similar to a previous happening in an out-of-body experience many years earlier, but with some basic differences. Then I was the person who was being shown the dying youngster because I myself had experienced an inexplicable physical abdominal pain. Very early on, when he was going through his out-of-body experiences, he had like what he called like a spear pain thrust through him. He didn't know what it was going on, didn't know what was happening to him. And there was no physical association with this poignant pain that he was experiencing. But now, he goes on, I was the one who was showing the old me the reason. So he, in effect, and it's a kind of fumble way to get into this, but he is now his future self, showing his past self why and elucidating what these anomalous experiences were that he was having in his earlier books. So I had, it seemed, answered an earlier call for help from myself. And the youngster, well, where did he go? Well, this was a experience that he was having that I won't go into. But I was about to return to the physical to think it over when another signal came in strongly. This time, I understood it more clearly. He's now familiar that his former self was calling for help, and he was able to show up as his now present, stronger self to help, helping himself. It was much like hearing someone call for help, or a telephone ringing when you know it's your phone. It was not difficult to home in on it. Below me appeared a small building with a hole in the side of it and wide steps leading down inside. I walked carefully down the steps because the signal was coming from inside. There, lying on a cot, was a man thrashing around wildly. Hanging on to his back were two children, about 4 or 5 years old, riding out the bucking and pitching. The man was sobbing in fear and desperately trying to pull the two little ones off of his shoulders. I reached over and gently pulled the children away from him. He lay back in the cot, whimpering in relief. I looked down at the children lying quietly, one cradled in each of my arms. They were not children, but cats. Pets. I remembered well. Cats in an OB state, out of body state. I put my two old friends on the roof, walked back up the stairs, and once at the top, pulled the quick switch, phasing just slightly. I returned to the physical, feeling that it would have to be feeling that this would have to be thought through logically. It was easy for me to remember the two experiences I had, as it were, revisited by the perspective but the perspective in both was different. What was the common change to both? Logic had an answer, although I did not know how I could accept it. And he goes on to say it was my past self calling for help, and I, my future self, answered. In the first incident many years ago, I was taken by someone and shown the primitive battle to explain a pain in my physical body that I was suffering at the time. I knew then that I was the young warrior impaled in the dust by a spear. So his past life, he was a warrior, he got killed by a spear, and that kill shot echoed throughout his existence through many lives and seemed to, become activated when the blurring of the lines of lives became more prominent. Upon realizing this, I had returned to the physical in relief and understanding. He knew what the source of the pain was. He was a warrior. This time, however, I was not the one who was doing the showing. I was the one who took the then worried me to the old battle scene hundreds or even thousands of years ago to explain the pain. Another instance of him helping himself. So I was the one who was helping me. Also, I was the young warrior dying in the dust. That was the only way it made sense. That meant, therefore, that there were three versions of me at the same place at the same time. Yes, Rev self-destruct. Yes, the super soul, or the soul group, which he goes into in his books. The super soul, the oversoul, seems to emanate and exist within, the way I like to call it, it's like a gemstone. The super soul is the complete gemstone, and it shines through the gemstone, and the gemstone has all these cuts and facets where the light shines through, and it shines through different through each facet, but it's all coming from the same basic source. And so, yes, absolutely, the super soul is what seems to be the thing that he's referencing here. In the second event from years back, the cat event, I had been the one screaming for help, trying to dislodge the little demons who wanted to ride me like a horse, who seemed to own me, which cats do, as we know. And then a serious-looking man came down the steps and took them off me, held them in his arms, and suddenly disappeared. I remembered that he had looked familiar, like a cousin I had known. But this time I was the one who came down the steps and helped by taking the little cat friends away. I had come to help when I screamed for it. This, I thought, was a little less complicated. There were only two of me, of present. So, fun excerpt. And, my takeaway is that cats live on and they're with us and want to hang out with us as soon as we go out of body, which I think is fun and a good balm when it feels like we lose our spirit animals that we love so much. But yeah, the super soul, that is exactly, to me, what he is talking about, and how we are expressed through many facets of our existence, through time and space. I was listening to a Jason Giorgiani discussion where he was talking about various sources. He references Robert Monroe as well as Carla Turner, and how it does seem like we have at least quite a bit of anecdotal evidence through past life remembrance, in between life remembrance, Michael Newton's books, Life Between Life, a lot of kids, young children's reports of remembering former lives or being able to report parallel lives that they're experiencing and then forgetting as they get older. But that the super soul might be expressing versions of self throughout time and space in ways that might, at least in our way of considering, be overlapping or could potentially overlap, and then in Robert Monroe's case, help itself out. It gives a whole new meaning to we are the ones we've been waiting for. Yeah, that I always thought that was pretty cool. So, okay, now because I was talking about the PK Man in the video about the hair that I had produced recently, definitely check it out. If you've got hair, you've got superpowers. And we've all got hair somewhere. I wanted to reference specifically the chapter in PK Man where they discuss how he leaned in hard and ruined a season for the Philadelphia Eagles, and the implications of this information, and how so often we're presented with this idea that, well, if your psi power is activated, you have to be, in resonance with your higher self. And that's just not true at all. So in other words, for better or worse, these latent abilities are absolutely accessible to us without having to be do-goodies at any given time. It simply means that you have to be in touch with yourself. You don't have to be happy about it. But here we go. Chapter 8. And Rev Self-Destruct, muchas gracias for joining me. This is a lot of fun. Chapter 8, Superfan, PK Man. PK might be used to determine the outcome of a game or even an entire season. And not only the athletes might contribute their psychic abilities to this endeavor, but the coaches, too, could exercise PK. Spectators at games could use it. Even fans watching the games on their TVs at home could use PK. And that's a quote from Rhea White, who, her books are really difficult to find. She's got a book on being psychic that was written in the 80s that is out of print and inaccessible. But I endeavor to get that book and read it and talk about it. So, in front of the TV set. Oh, and for those of you that are unaware about the PK Man was a dude who probably is the most documented guy who's using psychokinesis in modern history. Because what he would do is he would write to local newspapers and say, hey, I'm going to cause a storm. Log it. And he would. And they would report like, this crazy guy says he's going to cause a thunderstorm, and he would, and it would happen. And I'm like, okay, well, this guy said it would happen, and it did happen. You can correlate the weather reports to the news reports that were printed in these local news magazines and newspapers. And he did that often, and he did it with, let's see, finally, I think I put my finger on it. I subscribed to you from Zerdus. Yes, I can do mad voices. They can be mad. They can be crazy. I can do lots of different voices. What kind of voice would you like me to read in? If you've got a suggestion, let me know. I do enjoy doing the Spanish voice. When we are here talking about Psy, I don't always talk about Psy, but when I do, I might do it in this voice. Hey, you're awesome for joining me. Yes. And Zerdis, one of the real ones, one of the greats. Just a brilliant gentleman and a wonderful a creature of brilliance himself with other people too. Hey, what's going on, Tuxedo Cat? Cats are people too. There's a t-shirt right there. I got to make that. What's going on? It's a pleasure to have all beneficent feline energy joining us this evening. But okay, so PK Man, Angry Dude, Russell Targ, and SRI had like stacks of reports from Ted Owens is the guy's name. They had stacks of his information, and they wouldn't want to touch it because what he was talking about kind of opened up a can of marbles that they were not ready to address. And I'll go into it. I also have his book explaining how he was able to do what he claims he was able to do. And it's an interesting practice. I don't quite know if I feel good about that practice or not, but he was incredibly successful. The practice, just to sum it up briefly, is that he claims he was in contact with two manted beings in a spacecraft of some kind, and that he would mentally project his consciousness, his attention, into a kind of TV screen, an image screen, or like a mix between a TV screen and a pensive from Harry Potter, and would communicate with these two manted beings who he called Twitter and Tweeter. And they, in turn, would engage with him and activate psi powers through him. Consider the Cats Are People Too t-shirt a gift. Oh, thank you. I will take that gift. I very much appreciate that. But you're tapping into something. You got some good skills. Real recognized, bro. No, hey, no worries. I enjoy the back and forth. It's why I do the live streams, the chill sessions. Like I said, this is great. I love having you here. This is a lot of fun. So, PK Man, Ted Owens, Angry Dude, claims he got his powers, as he discovered eventually through two manted beings that would work through him and activate certain, I don't want to call them prophecies, but he would say something was going to happen. They would work through him and make it happen, and it would happen over and over and over and over again. And it seems to be, I don't know if that actually is true or if it was just a kind of a mental construct that allowed his latent abilities to be activated. It was a way for him to be like, well, it's not me, it's these beings, and that's why it works. Because perhaps he himself could not come to grips with the immense potency that he was carrying. Jeffrey Mishlove talks about an experience that he writes in this book where Ted Owens got pissed off with Jeffrey Mishlove on the phone. Jeffrey Mishlove, New Thinking Aloud, parapsychologist, been talking about this stuff for quite some time. Mishlove was talking to him on the phone. Ted Owens was getting upset, and Ted Owens was like, "You won't like me when I'm angry," you know, Hulk style, but PK. And he hung up the phone on Mishlove and began, according to Ted Owens, to project like death, disease, kind of degradation of his system and strangulation of Mishlove. And Mishlove reported that like all of a sudden he felt like he immediately came down with a kind of pressure, sickness, like he was having a hard time breathing, and it came out of nowhere, and then it stopped after a little while. And Ted Owens told him later, it's like, yeah, I was kind of trying to kill you a little bit, but I realized that was messed up, and you're actually trying to help me get this information out, so I won't kill you. But he was legitimately attempting to do Mishlove in there for like a little bit, and his potency was so palpable Mishlove felt as if darkness was closing in on him in a tangibly oppressive manner. So the dude, I don't know exactly how it works. Again, I have his book. I'll go into his process, but he was potent. And the overarching lesson I take from it all is that his potency is an example that we too are quite potent, and that we must take care in that our potency might, if not managed, mastered, engaged with in a level of respect and self-understanding, could do ourselves in, do others in, create some potholes in the road of life that could otherwise be built into bridges, into places that we'd rather go. So anyway, but this is a really cool story because he absolutely Fs with the Philadelphia Eagles for an entire season. So in front of the TV set with a bottle of scotch, during his Cleveland and Chicago experiments described in Chapter 5, Owens apparently affected a system more complex than the weather, more sophisticated than a NASA missile, and more unpredictable than an erupting volcano. It appears that he was able to influence the workings of the human brain in order to make people behave in erratic and bizarre ways. The odd, lunatic behavior of so many local residents during these demonstrations, such as people claiming to hear the voice of God or receiving messages from outer space, may have been mitigated by several factors. Living in the decadent and stagnant confines of this country's poverty stricken inner cities can create pressing conditions that may cause people to act in socially unacceptable ways. So it's hard to tell if Owens really had anything to do with the activities reported from these two Midwestern cities. Despite such factors, there were more specific instances where it did seem that Ted Owens had made people behave just the way he wanted them to. The fact was no better illustrated than by his ability to influence sports events. Owens was an avid sports fan, and he had been trying to sway the outcomes of football and basketball games for several years. Just how Owens manipulated a football game was fascinating, especially when he did it through TV. This procedure is simple. First, he sat down in front of a widescreen color TV, armed with a healthy stock of beer, Dutch imported no less, and a bottle of scotch. Oof, it's going hard. He leisurely sipped away during the course of the game and let his PK go into action. Owens claimed that he could do little to actually help a team. He could only hinder their opponents. From there, claimed the psychic, the team he was assisting must take advantage of the situations that arose. So, tilting the scales. It is up to them, the psychic stated. If they aren't going to take advantage of what I'm doing, I can't help them either. During a football game, for instance, Owen felt that he could do little to affect runs or kicks, so he focused on passes. Each time the opposing quarterback was ready to pass, Owens would point his hand at the TV, almost as giving the sign of the evil eye, and would concentrate on blurring the player's vision so that the pass would be incomplete. He also constantly focused his attention over the opposing team in order to imbue the playing field itself with his force. And if he got mad enough, he would start shouting, "Enemy, enemy," each time the cameraman came in for a close-up of the opposing team member. The demonstrations were nerve-wracking to watch, and Owens usually locked his family out of his study while he attempted to manipulate the game. Yes, it does make a lot of sense psychologically to outsource to mantids. Yes, and he even goes into that in his book, which now you give me the impetus to talk about his process. Less id, less ego. That's right. Get the superego involvement to contend with. No, move it all out of the way. With great power, negativity accumulates, and yeah, evil eye. It can accumulate. Great power, great responsibility. Spider-Man, we all know. But I firmly believe that there is a majority of human beings that, if they are awakened to the great power that lies latent within them, they would eventually, through possible stumbling blocks and experiences, become wonderful paragons and guardians of this earth and the experience of being a human being, far more than the chodes that may be attempting to manage our experience at the moment. Especially if you're raising your voice at the TV, screaming enemy. Yeah, I mean, so intense. Take a shot, enemy. But I mean, it. So anyway, we'll go on here. Owen's sports interests represented a quite bit of irony, or a quiet bit of irony in one respect, excuse me. For years, he had been trying to persuade scientists and parapsychologists to take his claims seriously. He was always mailing his experiences and reports, newspapers, scientists, institutions, and nobody wanted to touch him with a 39 and a half foot pole. He had urged them to publish his predictions, demonstrations, and successes, but he had generally failed in obtaining the type of public attention that he was looking after. Yet his ability to influence sports events, which was perhaps the most flippant way in which Owens used his psychic abilities, earned him headlines in sports columns across the country and in some of this nation's most prestigious papers. So, I mean, this is, again, it's all documented. Just as with his weather demonstrations, Owen's sports exhibitions covered a wide range of forms, guises, and effects. Sometimes he would attempt to influence the overall outcome of a specific game, and at other times he would try to control, for better or worse, a particular player. Oof, can you imagine being that player? What is that? Get it off of me. And if he got sufficiently riled, Owens was likely to hex a team for an entire season. And here we go. PK might contribute to the outcome of a game or even an entire season. None of these claims should strike anyone as strange, since a sporting event, especially team competition, may serve as a perfect setting for ESP and PK manipulation. We know that an athletic competition is a random system of sorts. During a basketball or football match, for instance, people dart about every which way. Balls are thrown with dizzying regularity. And the slightest error in judgment, movement, or skill can significantly alter the outcome of a play, a game, or even an entire season. It is for this reason that a few parapsychologists have long wondered to what extent psychic factors may interact during athletic competitions. Could freak plays, miraculous outcomes, or bizarre maneuvers on the playing field have been mitigated by ESP or PK? I say yes. Could psychic ability be the athlete's edge? And again, yes, to some significant degree, because again, it's in all of us. Just how to tap into it, how to get into that flow state. We needn't just speculate on these questions, since strong anecdotal evidence exists that suggests an inherent relationship between psychic phenomena and the state of mind the athlete enters during competition. Competitive sports demand a great deal of the participating athlete, wrote Rhea White in her classic book, The Psychic Side of Sports, co-authored with Michael Murphy. White is a sports fan as well as a highly regarded parapsychologist who has made a detailed study of the role psychic abilities play in sports. They must be strongly motivated, she goes on to say, employ intense concentration, yet remain relaxed, visualize their targets, and drive themselves beyond the normal limitation of their muscles. It shouldn't seem strange, then, that some of these athletes, as they push themselves up to this extra mental and physical output, are using PK. Jedi, all right? That's some Jedi shit right there. White went on to point out that an athlete gifted with psychic ability would have a considerable edge in such games as golf, football, or basketball, or really any sport. An athlete, like a laboratory PK subject, is constantly trying to will a certain outcome to take place. And there seems little reason that this type of willful volition couldn't become a real but unrecognized factor in sports. Baseballs that take odd turns in the air, leading to base hits, players who always seem to be in the right place at the right time, inexplicable errors and fumbles. All these might be manifestations of psychic forces, inadvertently unleashed by the athletes in the heat of the game. Moreover, suggested White, PK might be used to determine the outcome of a game or even an entire season. And not only the athletes might contribute to these psychic abilities to these endeavors, but the coaches too could exercise PK. Spectators at the game could use it. Even fans watching the game on their TVs at home could use PK. Now, White isn't the only parapsychologist who takes the idea of spectator PK seriously. Our US chess teams have never been comfortable about the fact that the former Soviets regularly employ psychics to whammy them. That's a quote unquote, to whammy them during international competitions. It's that Anchorman, whammy! There it is. The most pragmatic use of ESP and PK brings us back to the issue of Ted Owens' claims that he has been able to produce just this type of effect over the TV. If only I could recall what I heard of so many high-end athletes having toxoplasmosis. Oh, yeah, man, there's got to be some hidden awesomeness with toxoplasmosis. This idea of it causing psychosis, I don't buy. I think that's just, having way too many cats and being around cat pee, that probably does something. But toxoplasmosis, there's more to discover there. Shout out to the cats. So it's nonetheless interesting to note that years ago, experimental parapsychologists discovered a curious effect that represents a laboratory analog to the spectator PK effect. This discovery was made back in the 1940s, when a few of the original Duke University researchers began conducting help or hinder tests. These were relatively simple dice throwing tests in which two subjects were used. Sometimes both subjects would try to influence a series of dice throws in the same direction by trying to make one specific die face come up more often than chance could account for. Episode 1, anybody? These attempts would alternate with other trials in which one of the subjects would attempt to offset his partner's success by focusing his attention on a different target. The first help hinder experiment was published by the Duke University Parapsychology Laboratory in 1947. It was Betty Humphrey, a young research associate at the lab, who reported that extra chance results had been obtained during the help condition, while only chance scoring had been achieved during the hinder condition. From these results, one might suggest that a spectator at a PK experiment could significantly influence the outcome of a test. The Humphrey experiment had only been replicated once, some 20 years later in 1968, by two other parapsychologists working at the same Durham, North Carolina lab, now off campus, where Humphrey had conducted her original work. Their experiment showed no consistent results, though. Nonetheless, the fact that help hinder PK tests had been successful in the past suggests that Owens' claim about his ability to influence sporting events is not impossible. Perhaps most psychokinesis by spectators goes unnoticed because the influences of many different people cancel each other out. That makes sense. A clear, coherent mind full of both self-confidence and mental focus is rare enough in our world. Psychokinetic talent, of the type apparently exhibited by individuals such as Uri Geller or Ted Owens, is also extremely rare and controversial. So it should be no surprise that our understanding of PK is so meager. I will take the Eagles apart with PK. Sometimes Owens would focus his PK directly on a specific player in a more overt way than merely making him fumble the pass. One such incident occurred in 1968 as a result of the psychic's long-standing feud with the Philadelphia Eagles. In 1965, Owens approached the Eagles management with the offer that, for a fee, he would assure the team's victory that year and lead them to the Super Bowl. Can you imagine? Hey, you guys, I'm gonna hook you up and lead you to the Super Bowl with my mind. Okay, guy, why don't you go sit down back in the stage or back in the stands, all right? Just go have a hot dog, just hang out, all right? Yeah, beers and whiskey to get into a zone adds more merit to your own random audio movie sync experiences. I like to read that. That is very cool. I would love to know some of those experiences. Type them up. I'll read them in a voice if you like. Pick a voice. I'll read your story. Let's see here. The management wouldn't even meet with the psychic to discuss the matter. Who is this guy? Get him out of here. So, in retaliation, this dude, Owens decided to hex the team for good. The hex was publicly announced when Philadelphia newspapers published a story about Owens versus the Eagles in October 1966. I got to find this somehow. The papers flippantly quoted the story when it became obvious that the Eagles were putting on a poor showing that season. Joe McGinnis, a sports writer in Philadelphia, met with Owens to discuss the situation and later assured his readers that Owens had indeed written the owner of the team that, since you will not take me seriously and graciously meet with me to discuss the matter, from now on, in each Eagle game, I will use my PK system. I don't like using PK against the Eagles, Owens told the sports writer, but he was finding the team's management hard-headed. The only way I can make them believe in it, he added, is to clobber them with it. Owens explained to McGinnis how he enacted one of his PK curses. When I use it against a football team like the Eagles, he explained, it blankets the field and attaches itself to each man. Basically, what it does is magnify human error. Everything goes wrong for the team under the spell. The other team will get 10 scoring opportunities for every one of the team I'm working against gets. If they take advantage even a little bit, well, they will win the game. The Eagles didn't have a cheery 1966 season, and in 1968, Owens went on the attack. Before the commencement of the 1968 season, the psychic, then still living in Philadelphia, wrote to several local sports writers to say that he would take the Eagles apart with PK, and that he would cause no less than 20 injuries to the team during the season. I haven't read this in a little bit. This is always a shock to me. It looks as if he made good on his claim, too. The Eagles lost 11 straight games after Owens made his threat and suffered 30 injuries by the end of the season. But what may have been the highlight of the team's bad luck came on September 29th. This is the incident to which I alluded at the beginning of the section. Stan Hochman, a sports writer, maybe Hochman, Hochman, a sports writer for the Philadelphia Daily News, and one of the writers Owens had first contacted, had begun to take the psychic seriously when he saw how badly the Eagles were doing that year. Hochman became so intrigued with Owens that he decided to take the psychic with him to a key game scheduled against the Dallas Cowboys on September 29th. I figured I'd pin him down as to his claims of hexing the team, Hochman wrote in his September 30th column after the game had ended in a rousing defeat for the Eagles. Hochman went on to report that throughout the game, Owens attempted to beat down the Eagles, but wasn't getting much help from the Cowboys, who had begun the game by playing decidedly under par. The Eagles' star fullback, Tom Woodenchick, was having a field day at Dallas's expense and was taking advantage of his opponent's poor showing by gaining yardage on nearly every play. The SIs are going to have to get Woodenchick. SIs are the manted beings. I can't remember what that stands for offhand. But that's when he says SIs, that's what he's referencing. Owens finally told Hochman, who quoted the conversation word for word in his column the next day. He also said that he had heard Owens invoke the space intelligences. That's what SI stand for. He heard Owens invoke the space intelligences by saying, "Get him out of the game. Bullseye on number 37. Shift your target to Woodenchick." What happened next is a matter of public record. Several moments after Hochman overheard Owens invoking the space intelligences against Woodenchick, an altercation developed between the Cowboys and the Eagles over an interception. A pushing match between the two teams ensued. It didn't seem like the fight was too serious until Woodenchick, who was sitting on the bench at the time, suddenly jumped out onto the field like an enraged bull and tried to rip the headgear off of a Dallas player. He was immediately ejected from the game, and all within a few minutes of Owens' psychic invocation. Owens later told Hawkman that the space intelligences had caused Woodenchick to behave wildly so that he would have been tossed out of the game for the day. It was a more humane way of getting rid of him than through injury, he implied. The game ended as a disaster for the Eagles. Interceptions abounded, fumbles were the order of the day, and the Cowboys, despite their shaky start, ended up trouncing Philadelphia by 45-13 in a game more comical than inspirational. Love it. I am out to get the team. The Eagles, however, were not the only team toward whom Owens felt a certain amount of animosity. This dude had a lot of animosity to go around. In 1971, he decided to hex the Baltimore Colts. I guess the Ravens now. For the same reason he had hexed the Eagles. Before the season began, Owens had written to Carol Rosenblum, who controlled the Colts, suggesting that for $100,000, he would ensure the team's success. I mean, you got to go big, right? You got to throw it down. Rosenblum wasn't thrilled with the idea, but according to an April 27th, 1971 Virginian pilot story, he offered Owens 25 grand for his services if the psychic would get permission from Pete Rozelle, the National Football League commissioner. Negotiations broke down, as Rosenblum no doubt expected they would, and Owens never got the money. Meanwhile, Owens always struggled with money. He always had money problems, which, while psychic ability may be accessible, no matter which way your emotions may be flowing, money as a currency might also be affected in certain ways. And unless you're tapped into some kinds of dividend providing instruments, money might be more difficult to come by if you're always raging and being upset all the time. Just my thought. I'm not swimming in it either, so I don't know. So negotiations broke down. He got even angrier, Owens, when Rosenblum wrote him a further letter explaining that even if he were able to come up with some money, his fellow owners would never forgive him for taking Owens seriously. Salt in the wound. Since Carol Rosenblum is now dead, we will never know whether he was serious about his offer or whether he was merely humoring the psychic. But the Colts had a miserable season that year, whatever the case. The Colts also sustained 6 major injuries within a short time span from the time Owens originally notified Rosenblum that he would destroy the team by placing it on a list of five NFL teams he was going to help defeat. It is a matter of record that Rosenblum did, in fact, write to Owens twice during the season, specifically asking him to remove the Colts from his list of hexed teams. Hey, man, I'm not going to pay you, but can you stop? I don't know. However, on December 1st, 1971, Owens attempted to influence the Baltimore Colts, world champions at the time, so that they would suffer setbacks and fail to reach the Super Bowl that year. He notified a friend in Florida that he would help the Miami Dolphins win game after game until they were strong enough to beat the Colts, but warned that he would desert the Dolphins after they beat the Colts in the playoffs so that they would lose the Super Bowl. Not a great setup, not a great way to engender allies. Look, I'll only help you so far, but then I'm going to screw you over at the very end. Want to play? During the next several weeks, Owens' influence seemed to have spurred the Dolphins, who suddenly found themselves on a winning streak. After trouncing Baltimore, they seemed headed for the Super Bowl. But their luck ran against them, just as Owens had predicted, and they lost to the Dallas Cowboys. Predicted, I mean, he said. He didn't predict it. I would attempt to share one of those muted, never watched random films alongside YouTube back during random algo, random autoplay, shuffle music sync. Except, but texts add a layer of difficulty. Yes, 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 it does. I understand. Yes, synchronicity lining up with muted movies and music. Very cool. Very cool. Interesting. That is actually almost an interesting ritual that you could produce to induce synchronicity. Like, hey, I am lining up the ingredients. I am setting up the session so that synchronicity can occur. And then how to take advantage of that induced synchronicity. That's pretty cool. I did a video on Cliff High's manifestation technique where he talks about layering pre-verbal thought, symbols, mantras, feelings, and physical activity. It would be interesting if inducing a field of synchronistic possibility could aid in purposeful manifestation. At least 5 others caught it at specific times. Scanners, late night, hellraisers, deader with lag. They tripped out. It would trip me out. That's tight. I like that. Where was I? Right. Got into the better luck, but their luck ran out just as Owens had predicted, and they lost to the Dallas Cowboys. This case may not be particularly impressive, but I don't know. I think it's pretty impressive. But it must be remembered that Owens had to successfully predict or cause a number of individual outcomes in order to implement his long-range plan in bringing the Dolphins to the Super Bowl, only to make them lose at the last minute. Luckily, we also have clear confirmation as to the specific nature of Owens' predictions because his friend in Florida wrote out a complete affidavit in February 1972 about the psychic's forecasts. So again, probably the most documented dude successfully expressing his psychic ability, his PK ability. Owens' animosity toward Rosenblum did not end with the Colts affair, but may have followed the owner to a new team when he bought the Los Angeles Rams. Or now the Chargers. Is that right? Or are they still the Rams? With Rosenblum now in charge of Los Angeles' prize team, Owens decided to go after them during the 1972 pro football season. He added salt to the wound by advising Rosenblum in advance that he was out to get the team. That he made good on his threat is once again a matter of public record. The Rams had a disastrous season. The Los Angeles Herald-Examiner went so far as to run a story on the Rams' bad luck streak in December and labeled 1972 their strangest season. The story especially noted the large number of heartbreaking losses the team had undergone because of freak accidents, goofed up plays, and plain old incompetence. Even the Rams coach, Tommy Protho, admitted to the Examiner that his team was playing as though accursed. I can't ever recall any team I've coached having more misfortune on the field than this one, the Examiner quoted the coach as saying after a disastrous game against the Cardinals that week. We've had so many unfortunate things happen to us this season. Maybe our luck will change this weekend. Put the blame where it belongs, on Ted Owens. Nor were Owens' feats being recognized only by newspaper sports writers. Sports Magazine was impressed enough with Owens' psychic record that they ran a story on him as part of their July 1971 issue in their Sports Talk column. I think it's funny. A sports magazine has a specific subsection called Sports Talk, as if they're not already talking about sports. It's about, but we talk about it over here. Sure. My brain. That was the year Owens decided to go after the Baltimore Bullets basketball team. Oh, wow. I remember the Bullets were DC Bullets, and then they became the Wizards. And they got rid of the name because it hit a little too close to home. The Baltimore Bullets basketball team, when its management refused to act on Owens' offer to help them out. Owens' specific animosity against the Bullets is another case that cannot be understood unless viewed within a larger context, a psychic context. Owens had not started the 1971 basketball season with any particular spite against the Bullets, even though they had rejected his psychic protection offer. He was always offering psychic protection. But his attitude changed drastically during the April championship finals when the team was playing against the Milwaukee Bucks in Baltimore. Although the Bullets had rejected Owens' offer only 5 days before, the psychic had at first decided to take no action against them. But then, an unfortunate remark by a Baltimore sports commentator changed the whole picture. It was easy to piss off Ted Owens, and may have helped ensure Baltimore's defeat in the playoffs, as Sports tells the story in their sports talk section. To all Baltimore Bullets fans, a plea for justice. Don't blame the team's failure in the NBA Championship Series on Lou Alcindor or the Big O. Don't blame it on the Baltimore players either. Put the blame where it belongs. Blame it on Ted Owens. How's that? Ted who? Just a moment, fans. Ted Owens happens to have superhuman power. By simply concentrating, Ted Owens says he can control events anywhere on Earth or in space, all without leaving his living room. And when the Bullets made Ted Owens mad, he used his power. It happened during the first quarter of the second playoff game. The Bullets were trailing the Bucks, but not by much, when Telecaster Keith Jackson mentioned that a man in Virginia had offered to cast the evil eye on Milwaukee to help Baltimore win. The man from Virginia, Norfolk, was 51-year-old Ted Owens, and he had made the offer to Bullet coach Gene Shue, who politely declined it. That was bad enough, says Owens. But when Keith Jackson made it public on TV, I immediately called the Baltimore Sun and told them I'll wreck the Bullets in the second half. Watch it. I'll make them miss their baskets, and I'll throw their timing completely haywire. The Bullets trailed by 4 at the half. Then they lost the game by 19. The rest of the series was a Milwaukee laugh-in. The sports story serves to augment an April 30th AP news release that documents the Bullets' terrible showing during their third playoff game. The story related to the Baltimore team having played well enough to make it to the NBA championships, but was missing their shots to a staggering degree and had 7% more misses than the year's average. The AP story described the team as frustrated and humiliated, and caustically remarked that the team was bound to achieve the worst NBA championship showing since 1958-59, when the Minneapolis Lakers lost 4 straight to the Boston Celtics. The Bullets, have the right to refuse the PK man. That was the only thing Owens would say when the Baltimore Sun interviewed him about the affair, but not over television. The Bullets have the right to refuse the PK man, but not over television. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Competing with the Great Kahuna. On April 30th, 1972, in a letter to John Kerr, vice president of the Virginia Squires basketball team, Owens predicted that he was going to use his PK powers to cause Kerr's team to lose its American Basketball Association playoff series against the New York Nets. At the time the letter was written, the Squires were ahead 3-2 in the 7-game series. Owens stated in his letter that he was angered when he received a call from a representative of the team asking him to help out, but refusing to pay him a fee for his service. You got to shell out for the psychic power. Furthermore, the Squires had hired a PK master called the Great Kahuna to help them win the series and to entertain the audience at halftime. I mean, were I Ted Owens and already a little easy on the upsets, that would set me off. Newspaper clippings indicate that the Squires lost the next 2 games and thus the series. Mr.Douglas hype. Yes. Hey, what's happening, Nuclear 1252? Bangarang. Welcome, welcome. We're going over Ted Owens' sports psychic power influences. It's pretty trippy. They have the right to refuse, and I have the right to seek vengeance. That's right. Cheers. Okay. Newspaper clippings indicate that the Squires lost the next two games and thus the series. One article states that in the final game, the Squires missed 57 of 91 shots and made the fewest number of points since moving to Virginia 2 years previously. There are dozens of similar cases in the files in which Owens had apparently used his PK abilities to affect the outcome of basketball and football games with success. Sports writers have generally received Owens' claims favorably and presented him as something of a hero, opposing the big business management of the teams. His exploits have even received coverage in several national sports magazines, like Sports in their sports talk section. Owens, at times, deliberately picked underdogs. Owens had for years asserted that he could manipulate not only particular games, but whole seasons, and he had been more than willing to back up his claims with demonstrations. And this led him in 1973 to contact Dr. Max Fogel of Mensa in hopes that the Baltimore psychiatrist would help evaluate one of his experiments. Owens contacted Fogel about the experiment in September when he decided to design a foolproof test to prove his claim that he could influence sports events even at a long distance. Fogel consented to monitor the experience, and the following protocol was agreed upon. As the basis for the test, Owens would try to influence a lengthy series of pro football games. Only those games listed in the TV guide for telecast would be used as target games. Who remembers a TV guide? Good times. What are we watching this week? Ooh, when's Cheers on? And the experiment would run through the entire 19th. As a TV guide telecast would be used as target games. So anything in TV guide are the targets. And the experiment would run through the entire 1973 season. Owens proposed that he would stay at his Virginia home and watch two TV sets simultaneously, if necessary, so that he could influence two games at once. Mental power. He also announced that he would not be adverse to influencing three games at any one time. Man, jeez. In order to keep the experiment as controlled as possible. Each week, Owens agreed to send Fogel a list of the games he would attempt to influence and which teams he would try to help win. A success rate of 75% was his goal. The experiment was conducted precisely as Owens and Fogel had agreed upon, tabulating the results with an easy matter as well, since Owens also agreed to send the Mensa scientist published notification of game scores along with tear sheets from TV Guide, showing exactly which games should be incorporated into the final results. The eventual outcome of the experiment was just a little short of Owens' goal. The psychic tried to influence a total of 62 games. He achieved 44 wins and 16 losses, and there were two ties. This tallied up to a success factor of between 71 and 73%, depending on whether the ties are considered as failures or are deleted from the sample. Hey man, 70%. That is way past chance, right? I mean, damn. This certainly is an impressive success rate, but it is difficult to translate these figures into probability statistics to determine if they are meaningful. Statistics. The question we have to ask ourselves is rudimentary. Was Owens' success during the 1973 experiment more significant than what might have been expected by chance? Mr.Douglas says yes. This is an extremely difficult question to answer. Is it, Jeffrey? The outcome of a football game does not rest on a simple 50-50 odds, since a sporting event can be loaded by several factors. Okay, I'll give you that. This is why so many amateur athletic matches, such as bowling and golf, employ handicapping in order to even the odds between the competitors. Although pro football teams do not use handicaps, any sports fan knows that one team will always have an edge over another based on such factors as its past performance, who's in the lineup, and so forth. I mean, yeah, hometown advantage is a thing. This is why gambling on sports events has become a virtual science. Polymarket. All these factors must be taken into account before one can properly evaluate the Owens-Fogel experiment. It is difficult to know how to interpret these findings, wrote Dr. Fogel. Wait, we'll do Dr. Fogel. It is difficult to know how to interpret these findings, wrote Dr. Fogel in the affidavit dated February 21st, 1974, describing the experiment. We cannot use typical parapsychological statistics since the predictions were not based upon chance observations. Rather, Owens did have information about the worth of each of his teams, information that undoubtedly influenced his predictions one way or another. However, it would not be valid to compare Owens' predictions with those of, say, sports page predictors, since Owens, at times, deliberately picked underdogs in order to attempt to demonstrate his abilities. So his work and intention should not be called either guesswork or straight predictions, but something in between. Unfortunately, Fogel did not offer his readers any statistics showing how successful Owens was in specifically influencing underdogs. It would have been helpful to know this data to see how the psychic success in these instances compared to his overall accuracy. And yes, I would agree that's, steeper hill to climb, which would mean the data would be more impactful on those statistics. It is unfortunate also that this experiment was designed so loosely that it cannot help us to understand much about Owens' psychic abilities. It is impossible to judge from the results whether Owens was predicting the winners or using his psychic abilities to influence the outcomes. This experiment would have been much better controlled had Fogel randomly determined which team he wanted Owens to help psychically. Any significant outcome would probably then have been the result of a PK process. It might also have been wise had Fogel asked Owens to try to aid only the teams that were considered the underdogs. If they had achieved a 50% success rate under such conditions, it would undoubtedly have been significant. Of course, no one can blame Fogel. We can blame Fogel. No one can blame Fogel for the various difficulties one faces in making any meaningful sense out of the Owens experiment. Fogel was, after all, monitoring an experiment primarily designed by Owens himself. But the way things stand, we have no way of determining the extent to which PK played a role in Owens' 73% win record, and to what degree unconscious precognition influenced him when he chose which teams he wanted to win. That's a good point. You got PK, and then you got intuition. Is he subconsciously, unconsciously leaning more towards a team that would be better, more able to be affected by his PK powers? Chalk it up to the Mantids.
We really need a... Come on, Ted. Make it work for us.
Where was I? Owens gave Fogel another demonstration of his spectator PK effect in 1973, one that was above and beyond his long-range attempts to influence the NFL season that year. On November 4, he notified Fogel that he was going to try to exert a significant influence over an upcoming Washington Redskins versus Pittsburgh Steelers game, slated for November 5. The Steelers were considered the underdogs, and professional odds makers were wagering on a clear-cut victory for Washington. Besides the fact that the Washington team had played a better season, one of the Steelers' key players was out of the lineup due to an injury. Despite all this, the Steelers pulled the match out of the fire during the last few minutes of the game, and all because of a freak play. The Redskins had control of the ball just as time was running out. During what could have been the final and winning play of the game, the Redskins fumbled, and the ball landed in the hands of a Pittsburgh safety. Then he fumbled it too, but another Steeler gained possession of the ball and was able to run out the clock in order to maintain the victory. The play was so weird that even the Steelers didn't know what to make of it. We got someone up there taking care of us, was the only thing Joe Green, a tackle for the team, could say after the game. The Cowboys are about to be destroyed. During Owens' 1974 Texas demonstration, which is more completely detailed in Chapter 5, in addition to fouling up the Texas weather, he wrote to Ed Bush promising to hex the Cowboys forever. While it is debatable just how efficacious Owens had been in permanently destroying the team, 1974 was an awfully bad year for the Cowboys. Although one of the NFL's most colorful teams, their performance began to ebb as soon as Owens focused his negative intentions on them. A story published in the November 20th issue of the Virginian Pilot, a little over 2 weeks after Owens announced his curse, summed it up best. It read in part, Dallas Cowboy coach Tom Landry said he can't pin... Well, here, we'll do it newsy. Dallas Cowboy coach Tom Landry said he can't pinpoint the decline of his perennial NFL powerhouse, but admitted some strange things are going to have to happen for his team to make the playoffs a record 8th consecutive year. Our chances are slim, and obviously because of the tiebreakers, Washington will have to lose 3 out of its 4 last games, and we've got to win all 4 to get that wild card, Landry said. Dallas is 5-5 in the National Conference East Division, 2 games behind Washington and 3 behind pace-setting St. Louis. Landry said number 1 quarterback Roger Staubach, who was hospitalized with an infection of his throwing arm, was to be released with the hospital Tuesday night and will play Sunday against Houston. We've been giving Roger some antibiotics and his elbow is progressing well, Gross, Landry said. Asked what was wrong with his club, Landry said, your guess is as good as mine. We've lost a lot of close games. It's been an unusual year. You don't see many teams playing good football, maybe Oakland and now Miami, but that's about it. It's also significant that Owens specifically predicted the injury to Roger Staubach. On November 3, he had sent a telegram to Frank Vehorn in which he stated that Staubach will be injured. Wow. So he sent a letter saying Staubach is going to be injured and that the Cowboys were about to be destroyed. Staubach was had to be hospitalized 2 weeks later when his elbow became inflamed due to an injury to it a week prior. Well, that's got to suck. Man, this is a long chapter. I mean, this is pretty wild. All right. Football game should be wild, freakish, and quite funny. Ted Owens' 1975 Chicago demonstration had already been discussed in Chapter 5. In which some details were provided regarding his hexing of the Chicago Bears football team, specifically Owens, in a letter to WCFL radio announcer Doug Dahlgren, sub-Doug, predicted that he would cause poltergeist phenomena. I will send hundreds of poltergeist entities into the area to cause all sorts of mischievous, prankish, freak happenings. This will cover, of course, the stadium in which Chicago Bears will play football. I will especially request that the poltergeists not harm anyone. But the football game of the Bears in that stadium in the months ahead should be wild, freakish, and quite funny. In the Chicago Tribune of October 29, 1975, columnist Jack Malby remarked on Owens' demonstration as follows. The Bears are bugged. I've come across an interesting theory about what's happening in Chicago with the Chicago Bears. Poltergeists from flying saucers. When a team loses a close game because of one play, they had only 91% of their team on a field, you got to look for a more sophisticated reason than a bad coaching or missed signals. The poltergeist theory is contained in an I Told You So letter from one Ted Owens of Cape Charles, Virginia, who calls himself the UFO prophet, to one Doug Dahlgren of the WCFL. Apparently, Dahlgren challenged Owens to produce a UFO phenomenon in Chicago. Yeah, you call yourself a UFO guy? Let me see a UFO, okay, guy? On October 8th, Owens announced he would send hundreds of poltergeist entities into the area to cause all sorts of mischief, prankish, and freak happenings. He said he had connections with the occupants of the flying objects and set this up with instructions that nobody was to get hurt. Of the caliber of the Bears' play, I'd say the poltergeist had some of the greatest moments Monday night when the Bears had only 10 men on the field as Tarkington tossed the winning touchdown. I could almost see the little men sitting in their saucer over Soldier Field with the lights out, hugging their sides in mirth. What's cooking for the next game, fellas? On November 3rd, the sports headlines were, Have mercy, don't laugh at bear comedy. And on November 17th, Bears can't win for fear of losing. Right? Yeah, blame the UFOs, not the witches. Huh, that's a good, yeah, why not blame? Well, I mean, I guess because Ted Owens was throwing himself out there. It's my UFO prophesizing. My manted friends are going to screw up the games. But yes, witches, absolutely. Absolutely. Did he do it by telepathy or PK? I mean, ultimately, it is one, I would argue, stream of effect. And telepathy, PK, all of this, all of the names that we give are but aspects of a singular force that flows through us and through the universe. And that perhaps, depending on how you have cultivated your interior, your mechanism, it will show up somehow in particular and look like either telepathy or psychokinesis. Resurrect, that's right, resurrect Don Juan. The one stream. So cases such as the above could be cited ad infinitum, and there's a lot of cases. There would be a little point in doing so, though. These examples I have cited give substance to Owen's claim that he could affect the outcome of sporting events and the behavior of particular athletes. This finding in and of itself should be no new revelation to parapsychologists, since, as pointed out earlier, they have long suspected that psi might be hitherto unrecognized a factor in sports performance. Even some of the country's leading parapsychologists have thought about trying to experimentally demonstrate this possibility. We have often heard the idea bandied about in conversation with both American and European researchers. Whenever I hang out with my family, my dad loves watching football, and I told him about this story. And so when we watch, we try to psychically affect the game. First down, first down, first down. I don't do the enemy stuff. I don't get negative. But I do try to virtuously affect games with my dad, and that's a fun. You did that one, Dad. The most important aspect of Owen's sports demonstrations is that they helped us to understand a little about the nature of the psychic's abilities. So let's turn to this fascinating issue. Should we turn to it? I mean, my goodness. Okay, you know what we're doing? We're going to go through it. I will finish the chapter because we're having a good time. There are two ways in which an athlete's performance might be influenced by a psychic. One, he could affect the player himself so that he loses coordination or makes serious errors in his decision-making processes. Or two, the psychic might be able to psychokinetically affect such items as moving balls, pucks, and so forth. If PK can deflect a rolling die, it certainly should be able to influence a rolling golf ball. Now, there is some evidence that Owens has been able to employ both of these psychic processes during his sports exhibitions. It also seems clear that he has the ability to directly influence the minds of players he is trying to manipulate. Telepathy. But again, it's still remote affecting from a distance. Are you affecting the interior processes, or are you affecting the visible exterior processes? It's still one stream. The Tom Woodencheck incident will seem a good case in point. Owens may have somehow influenced the fullback's brain, thereby causing him to act wildly and violently in a situation in which such behavior was totally out of keeping. He may well have exacted a similar effect over those Cleveland and Chicago residents who began acting bizarrely as a possible result of his demonstrations in those cities. As pointed out earlier, Owens has long maintained that some of his predictions come about when individuals, even people unknown to him, carry out inexplicable, compulsive acts that fulfill the requisites of his forecasts. This idea is not simply a matter of wild speculation either, since there is copious evidence on file that suggests that a psychic can directly affect the mind of a person unknown to him. In order to demonstrate the point, we need only to examine one such incident from parapsychology's rich lore. Pascal and it's Forthuny, is it Fort Honey? Fortuny, Fortuny, Pascal Fortuny. We'll do that. No, it's French. Pascal Fortuny, Fortuny was one of France's great psychics. Pascal Fortuny. There it is, Fortuny. Born in 1872, he was extensively tested by European parapsychologists during the 1920s. Although educated as a man of letters, he discovered his psychic gifts accidentally in 1919 when he suddenly began receiving automatically written scripts from his dead son. Oh, that's trauma. That's heavy. Fortuny meurt, my dead son. It's okay, Dad. It's actually a lot better over here than it was there. Did you mean psychically, physically, or psychically? Both. Well, I mean, yeah, maybe both. Exactly, both. Left hand, right. Yes, precisely. Psychically affecting somebody to behave a certain way, or psychically affecting through PK, psychokinesis, a physical aspect of an event. They make the cream now. The French make the cream now. Creme fraiche. So that's heavy. He was receiving written scripts from his dead son in 1919. He soon decided to devote most of his time to giving public demonstrations of psychometry and of his other psychic talents. Unlike many psychics, though, Fortuny was intellectually fascinated by his own abilities and often offered his services to scientists wishing to study him. Some of the most notable experiments were conducted by the Institut Métaphysique International in Paris, and most of them were designed by Dr. Eugene Osti, the director of the institute and one of France's most original researchers. One type of experiment designed specifically for Fortuny was called the chair test. The psychic would be asked to describe the individual who would eventually be seated in a specifically designated chair, chosen by the experimenters several hours before one of Fortuny's public demonstrations. Ah, merci. We're all learning together. Some crazy shit right here, but we are having fun, no? What an interesting experiment, though. Who's going to sit there in an hour, describe them? That would be an interesting experiment. You could pull up a live stream of a public place and look at an empty bench or an empty seat or a spot on the screen and be like, okay, I'm going to run this experiment in 5 minutes. I'm going to describe something specific that happens in this part of the screen. I'm going to try that. It might be fun. It might be a fun experiment to do. That's a really interesting experiment. Okay, chair test. So, a remarkable test of this kind was conducted by Osti on April 21st, 1926. The lecture hall seated 400 people, but Osti and his colleagues asked Fortuny to make a series of predictions about the person who would sit in one specific chair of his or her own choosing. After contemplating the target chair, Fortuny made a long list of highly specific statements about the target person. He told the investigators that the subject would be a woman, that her summer vacation plans had twice been canceled, and that she was concerned over a grave, and that she had liver problems. That is incredibly specific. A young woman did, in fact, occupy the chair that day, and all of Fortuny's predictions about her were on target. That sucks. She has liver problems. Stop drinking so much, baby. You'd have to be in the right zone, I suppose. Mine was buzzed and in a specific recliner. Those sinks just flowed some nights. Well, I mean, he was in his recliner doing the whole football thing. Yeah, you got to put yourself in the right zone, the flow state. That goes back to Robert Monroe using binaural beats to induce that specific state. And I would be interested. I love asking this question. Could you describe that state in any particular way? Could you give that state a color? Could you give that state a kind of feeling? Was it fuzzy? Was it cool? Did it have a temperature? How would you describe that state? Or could you ascribe an associated sensory experience to that state? You know, it was like wind blowing through summer grass. How could we describe that? Because I find that is a really neat way to kind of leapfrog for others to try and familiarize themselves with a particular state via description. Those old recliners also had spiral wire. Ooh, that's a good point. I wonder what those spiral wires were made out of and whether or not they acted as a kind of antenna transducer, transmitter, transceiver, smell sight. Yes, the sight via smell. Smells like peanut butter and jelly. I think she has liver problems. That's very interesting. Very interesting. Well, and Joseph McMoneagle, Nuclear 1252, says that our psi abilities, he believes, are actually like the first ability of communication, pre-language, pre-coherent body language even, and is universal. We needed to be able to sense the panther by the bushes. We needed to be able to feel the flow of water that we could drink if we were thirsty. We need to figure out how we could sense shelter close to a storm. That's cool. Primal creatures, primal senses. And Primal, just as a show, is fantastic. Highly recommend it. Beautiful. Some of the more intense, heavy sync experiences could border on the profound, as if God or a demon were involved, being the internet or Descartes. Fascinating. A demon or diamond, perhaps? Did it have a necessary malefic feel or heavy feel? Interesting that you cite God or demon. That those terms carry with them a particular weight. Was there a particular weighted sensation associated with those states? Yes, I know. I know a trouble or two. I know a couple. Okay, where was I? So, all right. The Tom Woodencheck incident will seem a good case in point. Owens may have, oh no, we already did that one. We talked about the chair test. Remarkable. Okay. A remarkable test of this kind was conducted. Oh, we already did that one, right? He was on target, liver problems. Find my place. Osti, however, was not content merely with proving that he called out her liver problems, with proving that Fortuny possessed psychic abilities, but was just as interested in determining what mechanics lay behind the psychic's predictive powers. So after the talk was over, he asked the young lady to explain just how she had found her way to the lecture. She explained that she had only heard about it during lunch that same day and had suddenly felt compelled to attend, despite the fact that she had been feeling ill. She even admitted that her illness mysteriously vanished as she approached the hall, and described how she had become inexplicably obsessed with the idea of attending the lecture after she had heard about it. These facts tend to indicate that the lady in question had not attended the talk by chance, but had been compelled to go there, specifically to fulfill Fortuny's prediction, as though the psychic were somehow directing her to his talk. That's fascinating. A sort of hyper-real feel. Okay. I may have been physically weighted into that specific recliner, but diamond may be more relevant. I mean, yeah, it's definitely some kind of entity assistance. I totally get that. Good, bad, it's an interesting thing to think on. Some diamonds were nasty, some diamonds were neat. Matrixy hyperreal, but as if there were something at work between the two random video. Oh yeah, between the two random video audio sources. Absolutely. I totally get that. All of a sudden, things begin to thread together in a way that is beyond chance. I still like that idea of laying down the groundwork for induced synchronicity and whether or not that may track to a heightened state of potential influence via manifestation or psi ability. That's pretty cool. So, Owens may have possessed the same ability as Foltani to induce the minds of people he had never met to do his psychic bidding. If he could influence people in this way, our next question becomes obvious. Did he do it by telepathy or PK? Again, we're splitting hairs a little bit here, but interesting. This is an issue every bit as thorny as the precognition versus psychokinesis paradox that we dealt with earlier. The issue might also be moot. Mhm. Can you guys name a song where the word moot is mentioned? I think this is a funny question to ask. If we don't get it, I'll name it in just a little bit. I'll even sing the lyric. I want to tell her that I love her, but the point is probably moot. Okay. It could be that two different kinds of telepathy exist, one of which is PK action. The first type of telepathy parapsychologists have isolated in their laboratories might be labeled mind reading, during which the receiver is in the ESP test delves into the mind of the sender to extract information from it. Several parapsychologists, however, have theorized that another type of telepathy exists during which the sender somehow directly impresses their thoughts onto the mind or brain of the receiver. This type of ESP has been called agent-active telepathy. As an interesting side note, that description of effect, I recall a moment in Penetration, Ingo Swann's Penetration, where he discusses these two twins that he was around, or they look like twins. They wouldn't speak, but they would impress upon his mind what seemed like note cards with very specific words, like stop, go here, sit down, follow, don't go there, leave. Really like clear note card impressions with words on them would like right into his head, and they would be coming consistently from these two weirdo twins that he was engaging with. Fascinating. Such a process would be indistinguishable from PK, and several parapsychologists have argued that the agent-active telepathy might occur when the sender is able to psychokinetically cause altercations in the brain of his receiver, causing him to behave or to perceive whatever the sender wants him to. There we go. This type of telepathy may be a clue to Owen's spectator PK abilities. We are not talking about mind-to-mind communication. When we posit the existence of this form of telepathy, what we are talking about is a psychokinetic action directly onto the tissues of the brain. Interesting, but at least since I think we are starting to leave this idea of the brain being as responsible or in charge of processes. And in fact, I've seen more and more recent information labeling the brain as a kind of inhibitor of information awareness rather than information generation. But that's very interesting. Yeah, is he actually massaging the brain and making the brain be like, oh, okay, yeah, I want to go here. I don't know. Interesting. We are talking about this. This theory has more recently been dubbed the MOBIA model, MOBIA model, a term that stands for mental or behavioral influence of an agent upon the receiver. I mean, it's, you could influence particular kind of behavior more than they might naturally. That's legit. Parapsychologists in the former Soviet Union have long been interested in this form of ESP-PK action, and in the past had actively tried to experimentally demonstrate its existence. Past have actively tried to experimentally demonstrate its existence. Their research into the nature of the agent-active telepathy followed a diversity of lines. Some of their most famous research included attempts to hypnotize experimental subjects telepathically. Ooh. Many of these original, do you remember when Mitch McConnell was standing with a bunch of people and he was like, and he just dropped? Now, yes, old as dirt at this point, Turtle McConnell, but What if he was being psychically hypnotized by an adversary and he was just like, oh God, I'm being psychically hypnotized. Oh, I'm collapsing. Maybe. Or he's just stroking out. I mean, I think that's what they said it was. It was a mini stroke. But maybe the mini stroke was psychically activated. Many of these original experiments were designed by the late Dr. L.L. Vasiliev. Dr. L.L. Vasiliev, a Soviet psychologist who was for many years before his death in 1966 affiliated with the Institute for Brain Research in Leningrad. This work is chronicled in his book, Experiments in Distant Influence, in which a chapter is devoted to the issue of agent-active telepathy. Shoot, I got to get that book. As Vasiliev reports, sometimes he and a colleague hypnotize the subject. Then they would stand behind the subject and silently command him or her to carry out simple motor acts, Vasilievly commanding them to do so. Their subjects would exhibit certain facial expressions, raise specific limbs, or open and shut their eyes. When, like numb in the face. In light of this research, it seems plausible that Ted Owen, in fact, it's plausible that myths may be vulnerable to the mental intentions of other people broadcast telepathically. What is the antidote? How can we protect ourselves from such potential negative influences? That is a value question. Is the lag on? Is there lag? It might be me. It might be me because my internet is spotty, even though I am hardwired. There's massive winds blowing through, and so the internet was going in and out. It might be you. It might be me. Hang in there. I'm getting too close to the truth. He's talking about solution, boys. Shut him down. So how can we protect ourselves? Let's see. You're going to shut me down if I talk about how can we protect ourselves? No, I'm messing with you. It's okay. I think we're still here. My years of experience in considering such matters suggests that the answer lies in the ageless wisdom of the perennial philosophy. Well, I mean, hey, take it for what it's worth, but magnetosphere is weakening faster and faster, and the sun keeps freaking out. On top of all of the other influences that could be messing with our connectivity, we got the sun and the earth going through it as well. But again, hey, who knows? Maybe we got some agents who are just on call, be like, yo, they're getting too close, and messing with the stream. Who knows? We're still here, though. We're talking about it. So the perennial philosophy, as Socrates stated so soundly that his words have reverberated for 2,500 years, know thyself. We must be aware of our own thoughts. And I'll add in here also the thoughts that may not be our own. We must cultivate as a regular habit of mental hygiene the practice of noticing any negative thoughts that may chance to pass through our minds so that we can replace them with positive affirmations. And it may just be, stop. I'm attentive enough and aware enough to notice you. And I am able to notice you in a way that I can stop you. I am strong enough to stop you and notice you and replace you with something I'd rather think, like my cat or any kind of awesome animal companion. Many seminars and self-help manuals are available to train these skills. For over 100 years, they have, I watched The Matrix Reloaded recently. For over 100 years, they have been the basis of the American New Thought movement. These very techniques are the ones that Owens eventually taught me and are presented in chapter 11. All right, that's the end of chapter 8. Not all thoughts are our own at all. No, I think there's a lot of thoughts peopling going on, a lot more than we might initially like to acknowledge. But I mean, consider all the media dumping ideas into our heads. And, I don't know about you, but I am frequently surprised at how those sound bites are parroted, sometimes without much thought. You guys are awesome. This is so much fun. I love doing this and talking about this stuff and using my voices to go through this information. But hey, you know what? Chapter 11 might be next. I got to find that. I got to figure out a way. It's the end of the year, so this is still pretty spotty when it comes to live streaming. But I do want to live stream regularly. Want to produce content and produce live stream times and hangout times where we talk about psi and all sorts of good techniques that we can get stronger with. Another thing that I've read about is if ever you feel like invasive material might be taking over your space inside, get into a song. A thought is like a virus. Happy Harry Harden in Pump Up the Volume. Nice, tight. Yeah, a mind virus. Having a song. Yo, much love. I appreciate you, Nuclear. I will make a schedule. No, I know. It's 2026. I'm going to make a schedule. We'll lay it down. I mean, Wednesday night is a little tough. I still got the full-time YAB that I must subscribe to, which I'm very grateful for. To be able to do that. And so I will have to build a schedule around that schedule. But a schedule will be formed for 2026. And, we can figure it out together. What would be a most advantageous day to enjoy a live stream evening sesh, a chill sesh, as I like to call them. You guys are tight. I can't appreciate you hanging out like we have this evening during this PK chill sesh. I'm sending PK badass vibes for happy surprises and awesome success to you in the future. And who knows? Maybe we can all join in and find a live stream and try to label who's going to sit down someplace. I like to watch the Venice Beach live stream every so often. I wonder what that's like now. I haven't seen that. I haven't done that in a while. I feel the vibes. Good. Feel the vibe. Feel the vibes. Feel the rhythm. Feel the vibes. Muchos gracias. Well, I mean, it's a pleasure, and it's a pleasure to be able to vibe with you. Happy week. Happy holiday. Merry Christmas time. And I will set up a schedule, and we will get this going. Next up, PK Man. Chapter 11. All right, you guys. Thanks for hanging. Happy, wonderful, successful prizes and surprises. Prizes and surprises this week and beyond. Catch you on the next one. Peace.